Okay, so basically, I'll introduce my study to you, and then we'll continue from there. So as you can see, and as Professor has mentioned, basically we want to look at the variability of the factors influencing um, the interest in people riding autonomous vehicles. I'm wondering how many of you have ever seen an autonomous vehicle? Seen, seen. Okay, great. And out of those who have seen an autonomous vehicle, how many of you have ever ridden in a shared autonomous vehicle? Have you ever used one? Not yet. Okay, good. So in today's presentation, we want to look at so many groups of people, people who have seen and have used the autonomous vehicle, those who have seen it and have not used it in their neighborhoods, and those who don't have this vehicle in their neighborhood and and have not used the vehicle. So basically, we have different groups of people. We will look at how they, their interest, the level of their interest in riding shared vehicles, and expand it onto the autonomous vehicle terrain. So basically, I would introduce myself a little bit, and then we'll pick it up from there. So as you can see, I came all the way from Ghana to South Korea. It's a very far place, as you can see. It takes about 38 hours flying, and there's no straight flight. You need to transfer. And I've been here since 2017. It's a long flight, so I basically came here for business, basically. So yeah, and basically I studied at the University of Ghana where I did mathematics and statistics. And from there, I came to the University of Seoul to study transportation engineering. So I worked a little bit with Koika, and then I came to, work with the University of Seoul, and I'm now with KAIST. So I also had some chance to work with a little bit of groups that are internationally acknowledged. So when I'm free, most people ask me, what do you do when you are free? Basically, I like to sing. I also like to cook, and I like to travel, basically. So this is a little bit about me. And as I mentioned, I graduated from the University of Seoul, and I also had the chance to work on some projects basically offered by the NRF. So let's kickstart. Um, we'll first of all look at the background of the study, where I would introduce you to what we are going to be looking at. Then we'll look at the novelty and the significance. From there, we'll also look at the materials and the methods, the results, and then the conclusion of the study. Okay, so basically, people would ask, why should we bother about these trends? As you all know, ride sharing is gaining a lot of prominence, right? I'm sure when I talk about ride sharing, you all know what ride sharing is, basically. And when we look at shared autonomous vehicles, it's actually a combination of the ride sharing with the autonomous vehicle technology. Okay, both of them have their own issues, but then over here we are bonding them together. So we are interested in seeing what are the factors that influence people to want to ride them, and actually segregating them based on different groups. So basically, as you already know, several studies have conducted a lot of analysis looking at what factors are influencing these chances of people riding these vehicles. I think the microphone is out of order, so I'll just speak loudly. So basically, like I mentioned, these are some of the studies that have been conducted. However, we don't really know what are the factors, how the factors influencing the tendency to use SAVs change based on the familiarity with these vehicles, and also the availability of these vehicles in the neighborhoods of the where the people live. You know that when the vehicles are in the neighborhoods of where the people live, it's likely to increase the chance of people riding the vehicles. And also, when basically people are aware of these vehicles, likely they will be much more interested in riding the vehicles, right? Familiarity. So what kind of studies have been done? People have, actually identified several factors influencing the tendency to use SAVs. Over here, uh, um, the blue colored texts are factors that positively impact the tendency to use shared vehicles or AVs, basically. So males usually have a higher tendency compared to females, and highly educated people have a high tendency to use these vehicles. And also, when we look at travel behavior, these are the factors that have been identified as positively influencing the use of shared services and so on and so forth over here too. We can see that car ownership is actually negatively affecting these. I'm sure you are most aware of this. And also, when it comes to the methodological aspects, several studies have used a lot of different analysis, basically the structural equation modeling, because they are doing a lot of survey and analysis. So there are some latent factors they want to consider. And then people have done studies using the multinomial logic model, and then people have used basically different kinds of modeling. However, there's one thing that I noticed when I was doing this research, that people have not considered what we call unobserved heterogeneity in their analysis. How many of you know what unobserved heterogeneity is? Who knows? I won't ask you to explain. Just let me know. Okay, let's try and understand exactly what this means. It's a big word, but not that big per se. When we talk about heterogeneity, we are looking at differences. Okay, basically unobserved, we cannot observe them, basically. So if we put this together, you know when we are looking at factors that are influencing certain choices, okay, they are not all the factors that we can measure. Okay, usually I like to give examples from the safety field because it's much easier to understand. When we are looking at crashes, for instance, whenever there's an accident, the police goes there to register what are the factors that are causing the crashes. Oh, this driver is a male. Okay, this driver is maybe 50 years old. But we cannot measure all of the factors that caused the crash. Wind speed, for instance, we are not able to measure. The driver's height, usually we don't measure this. Okay, these are some of the unobserved stuff that we cannot measure. Okay, putting them together, if we do some modeling which does not consider this, usually it is likely that we will be getting biased estimates because we are not able to consider all the factors that are causing the crashes to occur. Similarly, the choices of using SAVs or any AV or ride sharing services, there are usually some unobserved factors that we cannot always measure. So we need to use a more advanced modeling approach that is able to consider this unobserved heterogeneity so that we can get less biased estimates and provide policies that are worthwhile. So basically, that's the method we are going to be using for this analysis. So what don't we know yet? Basically, when we look at the literature, like I mentioned, so many things have been done. However, the existing literature does not consider, okay, things like the person's familiarity with AVs or ride-sharing services, the person's the availability of these ride-sharing services within their neighborhoods, and so on and so forth. Also, most of the models do not consider this unobserved heterogeneity that I mentioned. So basically, what is the contribution of this study? We want to do a more segregated analysis where we can group all these individuals into different segments and analyze them and identify if these factors that are influencing ride-sharing services is likely to vary based on the groupings. So when we look at the groupings, I'm sure most of you will be wondering, what are these groupings? I put them here so that we can see it clearly. So basically, what we want to do in this study is, based on the respondents' experience of using ride-sharing services, and availability of ride-sharing services in their localities. We want to understand their willingness to use SAVs in the future, okay? And then we want to divide them into different groupings. This first grouping considers individuals that have ride-sharing services within their localities, okay? And they have used these services within their localities. The second group considers those people who have the ride-sharing services within their localities but have not used them yet. And the third grouping considers these individuals who do not have the ride-sharing services within their localities, okay? And they have not used them, basically. So we want to see how the factors are varying. How do we do this analysis? We first have to start with data preparation, right? I'm sure that's what most of you are conversant with. We have to prepare the data so that the modeling approach that we are going to use, the model will be able to use the data for what we want it to, or for what it's intended for. So we prepare the data by cleaning it, removing variables that have a lot of missing information and all that. And also, what do? We move ahead to do a transferability test. When we talk about transferability test, I'll go to the previous slide. You see, we have different groupings here, okay, 1, 2, and 3. We want to see that if we run models for each of these groups, is it warranted statistically? Okay, we cannot just wake up and divide the data set and start analyzing. Mostly what people do in the literature that you may have seen, they analyze all these data together. However, it could be problematic because maybe actually we could divide them like what we are doing here and get more interesting insights. And then we can channel policy interventions for each of these groups more specifically so that we can save costs, basically. So we want to test that, is it really warranted to divide the data before we analyze or not? So that's what a transferability test is. Then we'll be doing a mixed logit model. How many of you are not aware of mixed logit model? Let's say logit model. How many of you know what logit model is? One. Logit model. Okay, only one person knows what logit model is. Okay, basically when we talk about discrete choice analysis, okay, we want to understand, okay, what are the factors influencing individual choices that people are going to make. Okay, that is what we call the discrete choice analysis. We have several models for discrete choice. One of them is the logit model. We have the logit, we have the probit, and so on and so forth. So basically for here, using this model, we basically have a dependent variable which is made up of choices, okay? And then based on some variables that we have, after running the model, we are able to identify how this variable impacts each of the choices. Okay, that's just a rough, explanation of what the logit model is. If you want to read more about this, you can check in Google, or you can always come to me, room 5, F439, and I'll be there and I'll help you to understand what it is. So after running this model, this model only gives us the probabilities, like how maybe a variable is impacting this particular choice or outcome, for instance. But then if we want to know the aggregate impact, we need to do a marginal effect estimate. We need to calculate this, and then we can understand the probabilities more comprehensively. And then we compare the results across groups. And then after that, we propose policy implications for each of the groups that we are going to be identifying. So how do we go about this study? As explained, we come back here, we get data set, and then we continue with the analysis. So the data set, where did we get this data set from? It's obtained from California. There was this survey that was conducted, and then people were asked, about their experiences of using shared vehicles in their neighborhoods, shared vehicles in their workplaces or around their schools, and so on and so forth. And then these same people were also asked about their intention of using autonomous vehicles in the future. That's the shared autonomous vehicles in the future. So based on this information and the attributes of these people, we can extend that and conduct this study. So this kind of survey data is coming from 2019, okay, when this survey was conducted. And we had a lot of variables in the data set, socioeconomic factors, the thoughts on purchasing these vehicles, AVs, also consideration on purchasing these vehicles in the future, and attitudes towards self-driving vehicles, and so on and so forth. Let's look at it in a more detailed fashion. So we can see that in total, about 3,000 responses were collected, okay, 3,000 people. And then back here, we can see that in group one, where the people have experienced and have used the services in their neighborhoods, we have about 700 people. Group two, majority of them have not used the services. Meanwhile, it's in their localities. Group three, very few people have not used the services. Who knows why this is so high? Who can give me a reason why he or she thinks group two has a lot of people? Just a quick answer. You know, group one, group two, group one, they have the services in their localities, okay, and they have used it. Group two, they have it, but they have not used it before. Group three, they don't have it and they have not used it. Yes, who wants to try? Who wants to be my friend? Yes, they have no experience. Okay, I would accept that. Yes, probably they already have their cars. Okay, yes, who else? You know, most people are usually averse to using new technology. Whenever there's new technology, ride sharing, some people don't want to use it. So even AVs, for instance, most people are thinking, is it safe? Should I use it? And all that. You see, so because of this, I'm very sure that's why all of your answers are right. Okay. So these are some of the reasons why this is very, very high. Now we also identified that those in group two are highly affluent people, and then their income levels are very, very high, and so on and so forth. Let's move on quickly. So looking at the methodology, like I explained previously, we are building based on the basic logic model. And in this procedure, basically we want to introduce unobserved heterogeneity or random parameters, basically. Okay, this model is able to consider the unobserved heterogeneity. So instead of doing the normal statistics like what the logit model does, this particular mixed logit model estimates the probabilities using a simulation approach. So basically, we do a random sampling using some Halton draws. We sample randomly, then we estimate the probabilities and sample again and do some probabilities, estimation again. So basically, through all these calculations, we are able to consider the unobserved heterogeneity. It's more detailed, but basically, I don't want us to delve deeply into this. We want to look at the results and then the policy implications that we can get. But as I mentioned, if you read around this and you have any issue, please just come to me. Okay, you are always welcome to see me. So basically, heterogeneity models are very powerful for improving the accuracy of the model. How do they do this? By accounting for unobserved heterogeneity. There are lots of studies that have shown that without accounting for this, there's a high likelihood of getting very biased estimates. So you run your model and make policy recommendations to the government. They will apply your recommendations, but there's a high likelihood that they'll fail. So it's much more important to use very accurate estimation procedures for your analysis. That's one of the positive aspects of this study, the contribution actually. So before we even do the analysis, like I mentioned, we will do a transferability test. And this transferability test involves doing a log likelihood ratio analysis. Okay. So basically, this is the model that we use for the analysis. So when we talk about the first, basically it involves running several models. That's how to do this. We run a model using the total data set. We want to see if dividing the model, the data into different groups is warranted. So first of all, we run the model using the total data set, then the data set for the individual groups. Okay. Then what do we do next? We then take their log likelihood, okay, and then we subtract from this, multiply by 2. That's actually going to be the chi-squared, Then basically, with the degree of freedom, we can determine if this is statistically significant or insignificant. And if it is statistically significant, we can then proceed to divide the model, the data set, into groups and analyze. If it's not statistically significant, then that means running the model as a whole is much more accurate to, to do. Okay, so let's come back and then we'll look at the results. Finally, we are here. This is where I really want us to discuss. So we performed the log likelihood ratio, analysis, the transferability test that I mentioned, and actually using a degree of freedom, DF, of 29, we identified that, with a 99 confidence level percent, that rejecting the null hypothesis that says that all of the parameters, are equal in all the different groups of the model are equal is false. So we reject that, and then we accept the alternate hypothesis. So basically, what this means is that I don't want to speak too much of statistics. What this basically means is that dividing the data set into groupings is actually better than modeling the whole data set as a whole. And if we do this, one of the advantages is what? We can get different insights from all of the estimations that we are going to be doing. So I proceeded to run the model for group 1, group 2, and group 3. Okay. Okay, let's see the results. So basically, we have results for the males, group 1 here, group 2, and group 3. So basically, the results over here shows that for group 1 and group 2, males are, the indicator variable for males is significant, okay, positively impacting the likelihood to use SAVs in the future. Okay, and the first one is based on, people, they have these ride sharing in their localities and they have used it. So the males over here are willing to use the SAVs in the future. However, there's something interesting about those in group 2. Those in group 2 are highly skeptical. Like they are not really sure if they are going to ride SAVs in the future or not. That's one of the differences that we identified here. Again, I would like to ask you guys, why do you think these guys are highly skeptical? We already answered this, but I just want to ask you guys again. I already have 2 friends. So who wants to be my third friend? Why do you think they are highly skeptical? Those that are in group 2, the males. Guys, I want more friends. Or my old friends. Can you help us? Okay. Let me come in. Basically, these guys, they have not used SAVs, or let's say ride sharing services. And ride sharing services are in their localities. You know why they are skeptical? Probably they are still thinking about, am I going to be using this new technology? You see, And even this one is of a higher level of technology, SAVs. So they are, there's a lot of reason why they should, they are not really sure of whether they will use it or not. Okay, and then one interesting thing we also saw was that those that are aged 65 and over in group 3, they are highly likely to use SAVs in the future. We identified that this variable is a random parameter, and we did further an analysis on this random parameter model. We call it the random parameter with heterogeneity in the means. We identify what kind of factors are causing the heterogeneity in the model. Why is this indicator showing the randomness, basically? So we identified that with those people that have high income, those old guys who have very high income are highly likely to use SAVs in the future. And these people have not used ride sharing before, and they don't have it in their localities. However, they have high income, okay, and they are old. They are willing to ride it. Any ideas why you think these guys are willing to ride? Obviously, high income is a reason. Who else? Health insurance. Okay. Okay. Yes. Friend squared. I upgrade you to okay. That's very true. Okay. These guys are old. Usually they will be visiting the hospital frequently. So and usually they cannot drive. Mostly maybe they have vision issues and all that. So probably they have difficulties driving, or maybe even difficulties walking. Okay, so they will be very interested in using the SAVs. And even the most interesting thing is that they have high income. So likely they will just, get this vehicle and then they'll move by themselves. Also in group 1, we identified that those who have very high income, above $100,000, are highly interested in using this. However, in group 2, we can see that those that are old, okay, don't want to ride the SAV. And you can see the differences here. These guys, one of the main reasons is because of the income. Okay, so these guys don't want to use it. Let's proceed. So then we have a different set of results. So we can see, like I mentioned, the red ones mean they do not want to use the service. Blue means they want to use the service. So over here, those in group 1, those with high number of people in their families want to use the SAVs. And then in group 2, family size of 2 don't want to use the SAVs. Why? Who can tell us? A new friend. Public transportation is cheaper. Okay, okay, that could be a factor. Who else? Okay, so that could be a factor. Now, those people who own multiple vehicles consistently in different groups, they are not interested in using the SAVs. You know why? They already have the abundance of the vehicles. They don't need to use the SAVs. And then those who are interested in using on-demand driverless services are not interested in using SAVs, especially those who have experienced the SAVs, the shared services. So this was one of the most interesting results we found, kind of counterintuitive. Okay. And then those that are not enrolled in any school in group 3, those living in smaller homes, and also those interested in using on-demand services. All these guys in these factors in group 3 are not interested in using SAVs in the future. Now, based on the results, what are some of the policies that we can glean based on these the outcomes? So as you identified, the older guys, some of them want to use the service, but some don't want to use the service. We can see that those with high income are more likely to use the service. from the results, basically, we can see that there can be possibly an equity issue, right? So people who are old, they should use the service so that they access basic stuff, maybe the hospital or something, but they cannot use the service. Okay, most likely because of income, most likely. So one of the policies to get we can derive over here is to do it, offer some discounts, okay, or some incentives, which can increase their desire in using this service. So basically, I made a recommendation based on the Korean system. I don't know for Daejeon actually, but in Seoul, there's this discount for old people who want to ride public transportation. Is it the same thing in Daejeon too? Okay. So basically, it's very different compared to other places. In my country, for instance, there's no discount, no discount. So over here, I made that recommendation in the paper that I prepared, that based on the Korean situation, it increased the interest of people using public transportation. Okay, especially the old people. They move around and they're happy. It extends their life. Doing the same thing over here will be worthwhile. Now, if we encourage people, okay, who value convenience and comfort, over there, back again, when we go to the results, you see that those people who have so many cars, they have the comfort of using their expensive cars. So many. Why would they want to use the SAVs? So basically, if we encourage them through education, it's likely that we can change their mind from using the vehicles and coming on to using the SAVs. Or probably maybe we can also design policies that help manufacturers to prioritize designing the vehicles such that it provides comfort for these guys. Okay. Now, there's a lot of misconception about technology. People are not interested in riding these vehicles because they think they are not really safe, and so on and so forth. I think I forgot. I should have asked you guys, every one of you, why you do not want to, or you have not used the SAV yet. Then I'm sure I'll get this kind of misconception coming up. So yeah. So based on this, we can invite people to ride the SAVs. Okay. If we invite people, oh, we have an SAV here, just ride it for one day. Then people come and ride the SAVs and go back home just to give them an experience. It's likely to change their minds about SAVs in the future. Then it's likely to increase the chances of adopting these vehicles in the future. Okay, so we can think about this. Multi-vehicle owners, coming back to them again, incentives. Okay, incentives, or we can effectively craft policies such that if you have multiple vehicles, we can tax you more because then we know you have more money, right? So if we are able to put those kind of policies in place, then it will be a disincentive for people to use SAVs. No, to use sorry, to use their own private cars. Then many people will end up using the SAVs, increasing the chance of reducing pollution. Okay, and basically we also identify that high income, even with the old aged guys, increases their chance of using SAVs. Okay, so if we want to increase the use of SAVs among low income and minority groups, what can we do? Subsidies, incentives. Okay, and also education, because actually there are some people that exist that have not heard about SAVs. They don't even know what they are. So if we are able to educate people and give them these incentives, sometimes even the incentives are there, but people don't know about the incentives. We can, educate them about these things, and it will increase the chances of using these vehicles and reduce pollution, vehicle or traffic related pollution. So basically, these are the policies. And this study, for instance, is currently under review and has been accepted for the 2024 TRB conference. So just in case any of you are able to come to the TRB, you can get the chance to listen to this presentation again. And yeah, thank you a lot for your time. And again, thank you for your patience. I really wanted to share this with you, so I had to, rush all the way from Busan to here. It's been a great time sharing my research with you.
Any questions? Any questions?
Yes, please ask me.
Thank you for sharing your work. And actually, is there any possibility that people's education level is related to the income level and the acceptability of this shared autonomous vehicle? In my opinion, the education level is also has positive relationship with income level, and highly educated people also can have some positive thoughts on the new technology.
Yes.
So I think the education level is also an important factor on your research. So have you ever considered that factor?
Okay, thank you so much for your question. It's a great question. In this study, we considered income levels and education. Okay, let me go back to the results. I think over here we did not get that factor. Basically, there are so many variables that were significant in the model. Okay, but I only showed the key factors or the key factors that show variability. Okay, or are consistent. So over here, we can see that these guys, it's very consistent here, and there's a variability here. So that's why I did not show that. But from the analysis, okay, high education is usually correlated with tendency to use the service. Okay, and like you mentioned, income levels also is correlated with tendency to use autonomous vehicles, because actually people want to be able to ride conveniently to the maybe their meetings and so on and so forth. However, most of those people are really reluctant to use the services, because like in the case of SAVs, because they do not want to share their rights with other people. That's what was identified in the literature review that we conducted. In one of these slides, that was mentioned somewhere. Car ownership, for instance. Okay. Yeah, so in the literature, that has been looked at. Usually those that are very, affluent, mostly they don't want to use shared services, because they don't want to share their rights with other people. So in the future, I think that it would be very great to also look at various income groups and identify if there are actually some variability among these groups, income groups and education groups. I think it would be an interesting thing to look at in the future. Thanks a lot for your question. Do you have any more questions? Please ask me.
Are there any items measuring their perception? Perception means if there's an autonomous vehicle is already there, physical. But some people think that autonomous vehicle differently, isn't it? If I ask him how do you think the safety of autonomous vehicle? He think it's very safe, and the other people may think it's unsafe.
Okay.
And knowledge about the autonomous vehicle, how much they know about autonomous vehicle. In many cases, when they think about introducing new transportation mode, they consider some perception.
Yes.
So unobserved latent variable is in the middle.
Yes.
So are there any types of survey items in your data set?
Okay, in the data set, I don't recollect finding such perceptions. Basically, this data set was not like designed extreme like for AV. Actually, it was just a very general survey where they wanted to get the thoughts of people on e-vehicles and AVs and SAVs very, very broad. So it wasn't very like going very deep into AVs and their perceptions. So I did not identify that. But actually, I'm currently designing such as a survey to roll out in Korea. So it's one important thing that I'll consider to get to know the thoughts of people on AV ridership, basically. Thanks a lot, Prof, for your comment. Guys, let's discuss. Any more questions?
Why do you combine shared and autonomous at the same time?
Shared and autonomous. Okay.
Maybe people think it's different.
Mm.
Shared is different. Autonomous.
Autonomous. Okay. The main reason why thank you for the question. It's great. The main reason why we combine these, okay, is that there's this speculation that autonomous vehicles will be largely deployed as shared services in the initial stages. Okay, because these vehicles are expensive, and when they come out, I'm very sure. How many of us have a car? Okay, okay. So I'm sure only 2 or 3 have cars, right? It's expensive even without the autonomous technology. Now, when you include autonomous technology, it's much more expensive. Okay, so most people will not be able to buy. So then they will be willing to use this service as maybe first and last mile. Okay, so they will be rolled out. They will be rolled out as what the shared services. So that's the main reason why we wanted to look at the shared services as a start before we progress to other forms of analysis. Any more questions? I really wish we had a list of names, and then I'll be able to find my own friends from the list. Any more questions? We have a lot of time left. Yes, ask me.
Sorry, ask again. So, is there any interesting insights in that green lifestyle? That's quite interesting topic, I think.
Green lifestyle. Okay, we couldn't identify that. Like I mentioned, the data set did not have much of this information. Okay, so we didn't get something of this. Okay, no results on this. Yeah, I know it will be much more important to you, right? Eco-friendly. Yeah. Any more questions? The guys there, you haven't asked any question. Yeah, give me one question. Maybe I'll change this to the policy side. Maybe we can get some questions from there or the results. Okay. Probably no questions means it's well understood. Right?
Is there a factor that you consider if some place has, let's say, like Seoul or Tokyo, has public transportation very well structured? Cities like a small town.
Okay.
Maybe I don't know, like Sangyu. So there's not much transportation.
Okay.
So would there be a factor that maybe maybe if you do the SAE small town, well structured public transportation cities like so would there be a difference?
Okay, that's a great question. I really like this. Basically, in the conference that I just attended, this issue was mentioned. Like people were discussing, okay, rolling out SAVs in rural locations. Okay, and it gave a lot of insights. The rural places, there are not a lot of vehicles compared to the urban the centers. Okay, and not a lot of drivers, especially. So we need the autonomous vehicles to be roaming on those streets. Okay, very very important. In this study, we did not consider that. Okay, in the future, I think it will be very very important to look at that. Okay, so thank you for bringing up the ideas. Yeah, in the future, we'll look at that, and then expand and get more interesting insights. For this study was conducted in California. California has a lot of, they put in a lot of what is it, incentives to motivate people to use SAVs. I think the whole world, California tops. I'm not sure about China, but California is really, really doing well in terms of the entire of the United States, doing well in terms of incentives and electric for AVs and electric vehicles. So I thought it would be interesting to look at their data and extrapolate the findings and policies to other countries who are aiming to become like them. So great one. Great questions and suggestions. Any more questions? Okay. Then, since yes, since there are no more questions, I think I'll bring this discussion to an end. And like I mentioned, you can always, if you have questions and probably you are as shy as me and you don't want to answer, you don't want to ask me here, you can always email me or come to my office and ask me any question at any time regarding research. I'll be more than happy to assist you and discuss with you.
Okay. Thank you, Reuben.
Thank you very much, please.